If you say you can't do it, it will always be true. Hey everyone, and welcome back. Well, today I'm going to go through something slightly different. I'm going to talk about the year-long process it took to make my very short film. Now, a lot of you will be wondering, why exactly did it take you a whole year just to make, a very short film? It's like less than 4 minutes. How does that work out? Well, the simple fact is, I'm a regular guy. I have a job other than doing this, and I have a family, I have a household to run. So the time I had to make a film was found in between all the things that I do. It was found on lunch breaks, it was found on quiet evenings. It was a collection of small pockets of time in order to make my first film. Now, that should hopefully be encouraging for anyone else out there who is watching and saying, you know what, I'm in the same boat. I don't have a lot of time. Hence why I want to say to you, if you say you cannot do it, it will always be true. So let's step through it. How did this whole thing start? Well, obviously it all starts with a script. I sat down and I said to myself, what do I have to work with? What locations do I have? What sort of props do I have? What knowledge do I myself have? Because as they always say, write what you know. So what did I know? Well, I knew a lot about working in an office. I've done it for 20 years. So I figured, you know what, I'll find some sort of little, interesting thing about working in an office and quirk it up a bit and turn it into a fun little story. Basically, that was where I came up with the fact that I had access to offices. I knew people that worked in offices. I had access to office supplies. I had lots of them myself just in my own drawer. No, they were not stolen. I had access to office environments, the sorts of people you'll find, the sorts of pressures that you'll encounter working in an office. What's more is the themes were something that were actually quite close to my heart. When it comes to write what you know, it was something I knew pretty well. So what I wanted to basically do was come up with a message that said something to help people to think differently about their life. The elements that I used for the script all came from what I had available to me, and the message that I wanted to say, it came from deep in here. So I went ahead and wrote that script. I had a couple of people read the script, of course, and then went forward from there to work out what I needed in order to make it a reality. Now, being the visual-minded thinker that I am, I already knew in my head what the movie looked like, or at least I had a pretty good idea. I pretty much saw the movie in my head as I wrote it. When it came to storyboarding, I pretty much just had to paint the pictures that I saw in my head so that if I ever had to show anyone, they could look at it and say, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to do that shot from this angle with these people in it. So I am not necessarily the greatest at drawing. So what I did is I did lean in on a skill that I have, which is in 3D modeling. So I jumped onto a free modeling package and came up with basically previs sketches and in 3D and turned them into static images to turn into the storyboard. Now this allowed me to see what sort of shots I needed. It also allowed me to see the sorts of props I needed and allowed me to find out, just as you would have seen in one of my other videos, the crucial fact that I in fact needed extras to fill the background to make the office look busy. Because we shot this thing on a Saturday, and of course there's not too many people in an office on a Saturday. We had to make it look like a busy day any day of the week. So from there, what do you have to work out? Well, what I had to work out was the list of the props, everything I would need in order for my characters to come alive and have everything on set. Look, admittingly, I didn't do a great job of this, and you can probably tell just by looking at the film how empty the desk looks. Look, there's a lot to be said about learning how to dress a set, and there's a lot to be said about how much I have to learn about dressing a set. However, I gave it a shot, and that was the point of this whole exercise. So what did I do from that point? Well, I started writing many lists. I do this in my life. It's a great way of ensuring that something doesn't just fall out of your brain. So I had lists of every single prop that I believed I needed. I also had a list of every single actor, every single location, every single scene. I then turned that into a shot list. The shot list, of course, being a list of shots. And I had it side by side on my storyboard so that when I got there to the day, I could say, all right, next shot, what angle am I getting? Where am I coming from? Now, this is super handy, I have to say. I don't really know if people do this. I kind of just came up with it just by thinking about it logically. I didn't want to turn up on the day and go, I have no idea which angle I'm going to shoot from or whether I can fit a camera in a certain place. So yeah, I guess the thing here I want to say is that homework is key. I went to the location before the shooting day, long before the shooting day, and actually had a good look at it. I stepped it out to see how wide it was, how wide the opening into the cubicle was, how much space was in the cubicle. When I looked back, how much room I would need to fill with extras in the area around the cubicle. Homework was definitely key. It saved me a huge headache to go and write that shot list and be able to have a general idea of what that would look like when it came to shooting on the day. Now, of course, I had already made my previs images, so they were not in step with the actual layout of the real set. So that is something I learnt to do next time in a different order. Go to the set first, actually get like a rough sketch of it, just even if you have to do it on paper, then go away and plan your shots around it. Look, there's lots of different ways to do that, I guess. I just did the way that seemed logical to me and worked with what I had. And of course, what movie would actually work without a cast? I don't think there's too many movies you can really make without people in it, unless you're talking about Milo and Otis. So basically, I had to reach out to all of those who I knew were interested. I had a couple of friends who had said for years, mate, when you actually make a film, I want you to let me know. I would love to be there. I even had someone say, I'll be there even if it's just to serve you coffee. Look, honestly, I ended up putting them actually into the film. There's better jobs to do than that. Although you feel a bit like you're asking a bit of people to borrow their time, because this was all volunteer, it's exciting for people. It's good to remember that. People were wanting to do it because it was exciting. The biggest challenge I faced after that was, of course, deciding on the shooting date, because it's not just me deciding it. So what did I have to do to make that happen? Well, I had to talk to my cast and say, can everyone tell me a range of dates that you have available? That became very tricky, because when I then go back to the location owner and say, so what dates are available, and they give me their list of dates, and there's very little lineup between the two of them, you then have to go back to your cast and say, who can make these dates? And the hard reality was that I actually had to accept that there were going to be some people who weren't going to be a part of the film as a result. You know, that's just how it happens. You're working for free. Everyone's getting just a free lunch out of it. You just take what you can get. And then, of course, we move on to shooting. One thing I will say about shooting is that I was heavily prepared, but nothing will ever fully prepare me for what I actually went through. The reality is I focused so much on making sure that I didn't forget anything that I actually forgot to take care of myself. And I must say, this is a bit of a takeaway that I want to give for you. If you're going to attempt to do what I did, make sure you have a decent night's sleep. I think I went to sleep at 2 a.m. That night, and partly because once I finally did get into bed, my brain was just running around in circles on spin cycle. And quite frankly, when I woke up only about 4 hours later, and then frantically started getting ready, I forgot to have breakfast. That was mistake number 2. So on 4 hours sleep and no food, I made myself a coffee, hoping that would wake me up. Mistake number 3, a coffee on an empty stomach with only 4 hours sleep. You can imagine how yuck that felt. So turning up on set, high on anxiety, I then went to unpack the car, and oh boy, what can I say? I picked up the heaviest box in the boot of the car. I walked it in. By the way, it was pouring rain. And I got into the foyer and slightly wet, carrying this big heavy box. I squatted down on the floor, and as I squatted down, I heard a big on the set of my very first short film. I had a wardrobe malfunction. I had to wear a jacket that I borrowed from one of the cast members around my waist for the rest of the shoot. I hadn't even turned on a camera yet or set up a single prop. So what can I say? It didn't start out well, and although the shooting went very well, that lack of care for my own physical state only got worse, and I was running on high nervous energy the whole way through the shoot because there's so much pressure that's going on in your head. For me personally, that was a case of I've got this voice saying, you better get this right because you got one shot at this. You've got 4 hours. By the way, that's all I scheduled for myself, 4 hours to shoot what I was expecting would be 45 minutes of footage. And yes, the truth is, I should have doubled that to 8 hours. I should have allotted the whole day. I don't know why I went for half a day. I think I was just thinking that I don't want to inconvenience people by making them hang around a whole day. It was their Saturday and they weren't getting paid. So when things were going well, they were going very well, but I was still running around. So where did that snowball of coffee on an empty stomach with 4 hours sleep lead to? Well, let me tell you. It was shortly before we started to shoot the final act. By this stage, my tank had well and truly burnt all the way down to empty. There was nothing left to give, and I was continuing to draw out of that empty tank. In one of the shots, I had to get looking down into the cubicle, and I was achieving this by standing on a step ladder which I'd brought onto set. And as I came down that ladder, rather dangerously, I stood to the ground and my legs turned to jelly. I didn't quite fall, but I very quickly realized that I would fall if I did not stop running around like a maniac. I had driven myself to a point of exhaustion, and I could definitely say that part of the cause for whatever reason is that I did not accept maybe some additional help that people had been offering. Basically, the lesson here is there is no one person that makes a film, and if you try to take on too much, you will not make that film correctly, or you will probably not make it at all. So, again, a good example of how a team works together to make something like this. It is a collaborative medium. Yeah, so I went on to edit and do the audio for the film myself. I love doing that particular part of the process and enjoyed it actually probably the most of the whole thing, because I was putting together the film that I had wanted and waited to see correctly for a very long time. Now, you may not realize this, but the audio that was recorded on the day, every last second of it was completely dropped from my timeline deliberately because I had absolutely no sound recording gear bar the microphone and the camera. I knew this from the beginning. I had a plan in place, and that was to do ADR in post. And that involved, funny enough, messaging people via WhatsApp and saying, here's the lines and here's the section of the film. If you could just mouth the words into your phone and send me the file, that'd be really great. And that's what people did. So, when you see this scene,
even if you win the rat race,
that was Darren literally talking into his phone at his own
rat.
home. Sometime after the actual shoot. So, to everyone's credit, they did a really great job of miming their own lines. For all the very few lines that were actually in the film. So, the big moment, the film's release. How did that feel? There's some harsh reality for you. Now, look, that wasn't the only release that the film had. I did release it into a couple of competitions, and that's where this story does actually pick up a little. The film was presented in a short film competition just shortly before the end of 2019. It didn't actually progress in the competition. However, I did get a good amount of encouragement from the other people that were in the competition. In fact, I got in contact with someone in the competition, and they actually reached out to me and said, hey, I actually run a film festival myself. Would you like to present your film there too? And that was the second time the film got presented at a film festival following its release. I really hope this has been an encouraging story for you. Hopefully it hasn't scared you off. Filmmaking is not an easy thing to do. But quite frankly, if it was easy, would it be as much fun as it is? I don't know. I hope that this content has given you something today that you didn't have prior to watching. That is the ultimate goal. And look, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Look, please reach out. I'm going to endeavour to respond to any and all comments. And also, likewise, please remember to like and subscribe so that you can catch all the new videos as they come out. And of course, don't forget to get the bell on. Anyway, that's all we have for this week. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. This is always the bit where you're sitting there waiting for me to talk, right?